Good morning, viewers. My name is Shakur Rathar, and I'm the head of INDIAai portal. Today, we have with us Mr. Amitabh Nag, who is the CEO of Bhashini. Bhashini is an AI-powered platform that aims to transcend language barriers, ensuring that every citizen can effortlessly access digital services in their own language. Thank you so much, Mr. Nag, for joining us today. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you for
so,
inviting me.
yeah, let's start with you telling us a little bit about Bhashini's mission in the AI landscape in India.
Yeah, so Bhashini was, mission launched by Honorable Finance Minister as National Language Translation Mission about 2.5 years back or so.
Right,
Idea was to actually, the mission is to transcend the language barrier. That means, bridge the language barrier and go beyond.
right,
And in that, we identified, 5 basic problems as far as translation is concerned. One was that computer should be in a position to recognize what I am speaking. So that is automatic speech recognition. The second is that whatever is encoded in computer in one language should be able to get translated into another language. That is, machine translation, as we call it, or, neural machine translation, text to text translation, in a simple words. Then computer should be able to speak out what actually is being encoded. So it is text to speech. That is the third problem which is there. Then we have a lot of printed text around, which is to be read out and understood by the computer. And it should not be an image, when it is scanned, it becomes an image. So it should be understood as intelligent characters, that needs to be deciphered. And that is optical character recognition. And then we of course operate in a world where there are a lot of names, a lot of entities who have unique identifiers, and those are to be identified in the system, so that otherwise it will start getting translated, which will not serve the purpose, right? So these are the 5 problems which we had, which was again repeating automatic speech recognition, text to text translation, text to speech,
right,
optical character recognition, and named entity recognition. So what we did on that all these 5 problems was that we got conglomerate of all the technical institutes which had a footprint on speech and footprint on language and footprint on artificial intelligence and machine learning. We formed 8 consortiums, and we actually divided these problems into those 8 consortiums. Right. The other problem area which was there was basically from the is an offshoot of the 5 problem areas which I talked about, was that we need digital data to actually build the AI models,
right,
for these transactions. Now there were very few, there are very or not much of digital data, excepting the 7 or 8 major languages. The rest of the languages do not have digital data. So another problem area which was identified was to create the digital data to train the models, and that is a unique kind of a exercise which was carried out in the country, worldwide. Perhaps it was first of its kind, where we actually hired about 200 plus translators who went on the field, created what they were given an app on their mobile, and they were given a picture on which either the person has to write, type in out, or speak and give the digital data and create the digital data which was there.
right,
Having done that, the AI models were created. We currently serve end to end on speech basis about 12 languages and 22 languages on text. Obviously, all of the AI models are improving. Having done that, there was another offshoot of the problem, how these models would be rendered for the usage of the people. So we created a platform called National Hub of Language Technologies, which is NHL, which actually picks in the AI models, packages it, creates the APIs and make it as a service ID and exposes it to the cloud.
right,
And hence the people can start, developers, researchers, and industry and government can start using it. Having done all of this, which was basically the background part of it, when we went out in the market, the latent need started growing. And the latent need was that people actually needed this particular system, right? And hence people started exploring new forms of use cases, personas, as well as user journey. And when they saw the speech is getting recognized, the attempt which is there in the market is actually to transcend not only the language barrier, but bridge the digital as well as literacy divide. right?
Mm.
And this is the trend which we are seeing, where we have seen a lot of imaginative, you know, use cases. We of course are means the basic level of use cases are perhaps website translation, video translations, document translations.
Mm.
Those are basics which everybody wants as such. But when you go beyond that, there are a lot of use cases which have come up, which are very unique to the situation and challenges which we have been facing for ages, and that has been actually bridged using the latest technologies. So the problem which was of so many years or ages has been bridged by the latest technology to the benefit of the people. I think that's the landscape which we are talking about.
Truly remarkable work that you are doing there. Uh, so, talking about the recent collaborations and initiatives that Bhashini has had, be it with integration with the Pehchan app or Project Vani with, the ISC Art Park and Google, and then partnerships with Snapdeal and Rail Madad, how do you
Hmm.
think these initiatives will, enhance the language accessibility and support for regional languages in India? And what impact will that have on the users and broader, AI landscape?
So if you actually look at it, let's take example of Rail Madad, for example. Earlier, you used to, put up your complaint mostly in English,
Right,
and maybe in Hindi, and it could be a tuta futa Hindi, or it could be a Hindi typewritten in English, that could
right.
be the in which it was done. Getting into regional languages means that
Mm,
railways can now be connected to people who are beyond the
mm,
beyond the people who are speaking these languages. So it goes to another set of people, means
mm,
increases its accessibility to 20% or 30% more, right? And is so that it is more connected. When it is more connected, it is getting more feedbacks. When it is getting more feedbacks, the opportunity of improvement increases, right? So, you will, at the end of the day, the net result of this is a more efficient and, productive and citizen friendly railways than it was earlier, because earlier it was
right.
never getting a feedback. It was basically
Mm,
working on the feedback who can speak English. So you will get a challenge of what happens in Rajdhani much more than, what happens in a passenger train somewhere. So, there is a stark difference which we are making here. Uh, the other part which is there is that we have, you talked about Pehchan app. Now, Pehchan app is a birth registration system in Rajasthan.
mm,
And, the earlier the registration used to take a longer time because of the need to type in the things which was there. And, generally people are not so proficient in typing. So they used to delay
right.
till it actually comes onto the neck that I have to do it today.
Mm,
But right now it is basically done through a voice. So, you have increased the productivity and increased the response time like never before. So that's the second use case, and see the marked difference for which it is being used. The project Vani, which is being used, is basically to create the data sets of the dialects across the country, which actually covers the length and breadth of the country, which is being, used through, we are working with Google there. And
mm,
fundamentally, Google has, given this initiative to Art Park, IISC, Karya, the consortium, CSC is part of that consortium which is
mm,
working. And this is actually helping us to cover the dialects. Means in every 50 kilometers, a language changes in India, and perhaps sometimes changes to an extent that you are not able to even understand it. So while we are talking of 22 languages, we are cognizant about the fact that there are 100 plus languages which are being spoken by 100,000 plus people in India at least. And those also need to be covered so that the languages do not vanish. And we are able to preserve our culture and heritage. And each language has its own,
mm.
rich repository, both in terms of scientific, cultural and other things which are there. So that is what we are trying to do. And this actually democratizes AI and data science to a great extent, because when our promise, to the world is that we will open source the data which is there, data sets which are built up,
Right.
and the world can actually pick, startups, researchers, and everybody can pick up and actually go in for an innovation which has been never before. Our whole principle of whatever models we have developed, AI models which we have developed, are has been open sourced.
Mm,
So Bhashini has played a great role in democratizing the AI which you see today. AI today is democratized. It is not available only in research labs. In we had interns from college who come in and who know AI now. It was
Right.
not that it was. And I think we have played a great role in that, and really proud to be that today AI is totally democratized in the country.
Yeah, for our viewers, Bhashini is available in 22 languages, and some of them they're obviously being improved upon, and so that there is better service. So
Right.
moving on from this, let's talk about a bit about the main challenges, and opportunities that are there in developing AI-driven language translation solutions in India. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So, any language solution, if you actually are looking at, we are fundamentally looking at first thing is the bottom layer, which is the input layer or
Mm.
is the data part of it, right?
Right.
And digital data, because of historical reason, most of the languages do not have. And, some of the languages in our country do not even have scripts, so as to say. So that is an input level challenge which we have.
Mm.
We have bridged some of it through our own mechanisms. As I said, we created digital data. Some of them are still to be bridged. People are figuring out ways to it. It requires a lot of technical
Right.
knowledge and basic research to actually do this. So this is input layer which is there. The input layer also has a challenge of how diverse it is,
Mm.
right? The formal communication between me and you has a certain data set of languages, right?
Right.
When we are, but a tailor talking to his customer has a very different data set of a language than what Panwala is talking to
Mm.
his own customer. So, the diversity, the age also clears the diversity. Kids have a different vocabulary
Right.
than the people at adolescent age, as well as, the people who grow up,
Mm.
and older people have different strategies. When you come to speech, again, there is a wide variation as when you look at gender, people, and other things.
Mm.
In India, perhaps at all corners, English and Hindi are spoken. But the
True.
type of Hindi which is spoken in, Jammu and Kashmir is quite different from what is spoken in Kanyakumari. Both perhaps
Right.
are understood by people.
Right.
If you actually all the Hindis together, which are spoken in length of breadth of country, or
Mm.
all the English, they are understood, but understood by human mind. But can I make computer understand it? Because it
Mm.
generally follows certain rules, definitions, and all. So that is another challenge which is there, which is basically to make the accent, the pronunciation,
The
and the things.
dialects. Mm.
Should we actually be
Right.
doing the effort in that particular sense, or a broken English or a broken Hindi is also okay as far as
Mm.
computer is concerned, right? Or there should be a different model
Mm.
for Hindi, which is spoken in by a native Tamilian, versus Hindi, which is spoken by a Marathi, or versus spoken. Those are the questions which we are asking
Right.
ourselves every point in time. Uh, then comes the situation that we have multiple domains to which we are catering to, right? The domains have their own vocabulary. Healthcare has a very broad vocabulary. Legal has a very broad vocabulary. Those words and those vocabularies are not spoken in general.
Mm.
So, and means even a simple thing like, publishing industry or the news industry will have its own vocabulary, however small or big it is, but it is there and it will make a difference, right? Then people create their own brand names, like, uh, Suvidha can be a product for a bank.
Mm.
Suvidha is a word in Hindi, right?
Right.
Which means very differently, right? Sagar can be a station in railways,
Mm.
but it's a word in Hindi, right? So we have those kind of challenges which are there, which is the glossary challenge, which has to get built up, and
Right.
there is a active collaboration which is required to build up those glossaries. We, the initial thought of ours, or when people thought of that, okay, we have built up the AI model, we have packaged it, put created the APIs and service ID. Let's give the service ID, website will get translated. But when the home comes as ghar
Mm.
on the front page of website translation, everybody starts talking about that. No, translation is not good. It's not that the translation is not good. On the website, home context is mukh prasht as far as Hindi is concerned, right?
Right.
And that glossary needs to be built. So we have evolved that on the website translation. Perhaps we are most evolved because we went to the customer, we found that there are challenges, and then we started looking at how do we actually sort out those challenges. Very minutest challenge, for example, a website surfing is generally a stateless activity, right? You can you go to this website, you go to the next website, it will not remember where from you come across. That's not what the website translation is. So it is a stateless activity. But when you are actually doing a translation on the first page, if you have done Hindi, then you expect that if you click on that particular page and go to the next page, it should remember that you came as a Hindi customer, not as an English customer. So that makes it state, the state needs to be remembered here, as against the earlier case, which was a normal case where state was not to be remembered. So those are the kind of nuances which we are facing on this. So this is another layer of challenge. When we talk about data, there's dialect, there is, actual application which is there, which is a challenge. Then, of course, we get into the specific technology challenge. OCR has its own set of challenges. Text-to-text translation has its own set of challenges, and speech has its own set of challenges. Not to take so much of time, I'll mention one in each one of them, so that it gets into. In text, in speech technology, you have challenges with respect to how do we recognize, means at what time we send the speech for translation. If we wait for too long to send the speech for translation, then we increase the delay, right? If we send it too fast, I would be perhaps sending, half of the sentence, which will be translated very differently than what actual context is, right? So there's a decision to be made. Now, this decision cannot be made in isolation. This decision, you will have you will have perhaps a way to speak English. Say you might be using very short sentences and very, crisp sentences. I might be talking in a very long sentences, and there you might be pausing at a different time. So should I detect the voice activity and then use use the translation, send the chunks for inferencing, or I do it differently? A very typical and challenging activity there. Tonality is a challenge when it comes to TTS. The machine generated voice is just generally does not have emotions, right? So should we, or what kind of emotions put in, means what are you doing in different tones will have very different meanings. That is the situation which is there. Text to text has a very different things. I will, means a sentence like, if you have issues, let me know, I'll come back to you. Okay. Now, I'll come back to you generally is not a grammatically written proper.
It's very colloquial,
Very colloquial. So it will be translated, if I translate it in Hindi, मैं वापस आ जाऊंगा, means nothing actually, right?
Exactly.
So that is the challenge, that colloquial translation. How do we handle colloquial translation? Should we at all handle it, or should we constrain ourselves to grammatical sentences? Then there are half sentences which are spoken. The come, you can come. Are you? All those half sentences. How do we translate that? Then there are issues with respect to punctuation. Had your lunch can be a question mark, can be when you say exclamation, it means that how did you have it without me? Had your lunch, if you get it's a question mark, it's asking a question. Or had your lunch as a full stop has a statement. Very different translations. So that's a challenge by itself. On OCR, we are attempting to do handwritten. We are attempting to do many other things which are there, which is basically being given. So, there the challenge is that there's a lot of noise in the document itself. Document doesn't usually is there. And has generally varied sense of fonts. It can be font 16, it can be font 10, it can be Times Roman, it can be anything, because publishers, used to use it very differently, and handwritten again has those challenges. So what I'm trying to say is that, it's not that, the issues are not there. It's not that the challenges are not there. They are there, but it will take some time to actually solve all of it. And we also have to decide at certain point in time how many we solve, there. And but the whole idea should be, and that is what I would feel, is that we should not ask you to change, but the system should adapt to you.
Adapt to
and
that. Exactly.
That's the
Yeah,
way,
that's an
and that
interesting set of challenges that you elucidated. So I'll move to the next question. Yeah. With Bhashini being there and many private players also coming into this landscape. So how do you see the adoption of LLMs evolving in India, particularly in the context of, supporting regional languages?
see, as far as evolution of market is concerned and LLM is concerned, LLM, of course, is a
Hmm.
larger and broader game than translation. Translation is a very limited game, so as to say. But yeah, the influx of, you need to have an influx of
Hmm.
regional languages or local
Right.
languages. And currently, the LLMs are focused on English, and some of the LLMs do come into other languages, but then the, outcome or the
Hmm.
uptake is low, from that perspective. Now, there are two ways of strategies of course, handling LLMs as far as regional language is concerned. Let the LLM be remain in
Hmm.
one of the languages and use translation to bridge the gap what
Hmm.
LLMs give, and that is perhaps the current strategy versus a strategy which would happen
Right.
2 or 3 years down the line, where local language LLMs will also be there.
Hmm.
But from a context of private players being there in the market in which Bhashini is in, it is actually a very welcome sign, because that means the adoption of this technology is increasing. People are knowing that they can stay with their language but still succeed and still get understood to the wider roles.
Right.
You know, correct? The sense
Hmm.
of a larger and better understanding would be there. In a diverse places where you're actually looking at Bhashini's role, it is
Hmm.
basically to ensure that uh, you know
Hmm.
all the languages are covered. So we are basically looking at the private market to actually expand itself, not to 6, 7 languages which they feel are
Right.
economically viable, but they should also support the other languages so that they can also remain in the market. Second is that the idea should be to focus on accuracy.
Hmm.
It cannot just remain that since it's an AI language, error
Hmm.
is given.
Right.
Error is still not given, right? Error is still has to be removed, and there
Right.
has to be constant influx into that particular aspect which is there. The third part of it is that it should be affordable. You know, we should
Of
keep
course. Hmm.
technology affordable to common people. So it shouldn't happen that all these guys, everybody, you, I start using it, and one fine morning we discover that it is going to cost us among us to
Huge
actually use the
amounts. Hmm.
technology solution. So
Right.
these are the three items where Bhashini should continue to play the role. And
Right.
as far as E2 languages is concerned, of course, it is the first bridge to cross. But all languages of India, so that no language is left behind, should be the role. So these are broad level of thinking process, and there are a lot of efforts which are going to be there. Above all, above the three, it is the use case adoption which is most important,
True.
right?
True that. Yeah.
And the AI means AI has to be use case driven. That you have a use case, you build a
Hmm.
AI, you need a AI model for that, so you define that, and then you go and collect the data to actually build that model.
Hmm.
Currently, there were a lot of efforts which were there, rightly so. Perhaps it was justified by the times we were in, that we should collect huge amount of data so that the AI models can be built in. But
Right.
then somewhere we lost the fact that the data and the AI model will not be
Hmm.
of any use unless the outcome is at a use case level, where the people are able to either start to use it to increase their productivity,
Hmm.
improve collaboration, or increase their sales or cut costs. These are the primary drivers of anything to be used, or any product or any service or any technology to be used.
Yeah, so that brings me to the final question of our conversation today. So, what in your view is does the future look like for AI in India over the next few years? Let's not go beyond 5 years maybe. And how does Bhashini plan to, contribute to that vision?
So in the near future, as I said, we are getting focused on use cases and deployment,
Right.
and learning from deployments. So
Hmm.
wherever we are basically looking at the future, if we just say that we are building these many models, these many parameters, or these many billion parameters, X parameters, it's good. I'm not saying
Hmm.
that that's not,
Right.
but those X parameters, X billion parameters should actually be resulting into benefit of citizens. So I don't think the strategy of India is any different from what it has been since quite some time. We
Right.
used internet to serve people. We
Hmm.
we created use cases of
Mm.
internet beyond advertising in this country,
Right.
right? And we use that to serve people with unique use cases. UPI or Aadhaar being some of the
Mm.
very good examples which did not exist worldwide.
Right.
And so will be the case with AI, that we will use, we will have use cases which will use certain set of basic technologies to do it.
Mm.
And obviously, it is very important for India to keep one eye and leg focused on the basic technology, so that when AI is actually being used, we are not forgetting the basics of our own roots, because we behave, work differently, and this is so much well tied to the culture and
Mm.
the people, behavior of the people, and the way they have been brought up, and the way they are, you know,
Right.
collaborating, etc. Means in language sense, for example, you know, in English it might be uncle, but in our language it
Mm.
is, chacha,
Gotcha. Right.
tau,
Mm.
chacha, tau,
Right.
I mean, fufa, all
Exactly.
that relationship has very different meaning, and they convey a lot of things in that particular meaning. So, we have to be different.
Mm.
So basic technology research needs to be there and needs to be built up. And I think, there are efforts by government and everyone do that. Bhashini is also doing its own effort to ensure that the uniqueness of the models and uniqueness of the system remains. And although it's going to take time and it's going to take a lot of effort,
Right.
but that uniqueness is to be preserved, and preserved with the use cases which are coming. So,
Right.
that's
With the INDIAai mission also becoming operational now. So I think we'll see a
so
lot
good.
in this landscape. So we covered a
Yes.
lot, about AI in this short span. I will, I will leave it here. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today. And I'm sure our viewers will benefit a lot, from your vision about AI. Thank you. Thank
you.
you so much. Thanks.